Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey is a low-budget horror movie that exists because the copyright to the 1926 book Winnie the Pooh expired, and the book fell into the public domain, meaning anyone can use the characters in their projects without the fear of being sued by Disney or the estate of author A.A. Milne. So naturally, someone made a Winnie the Pooh horror movie, and now I'm gonna talk about it.
Oh, it is scary, Piglet. It is indeed.
The movie starts off with this animated backstory that's trying to emulate the style of the original Winnie the Pooh book illustrations. The premise is that Christopher Robin, as a child, wandered into the 100-acre woods and befriended Pooh, Piglet, Eeyore, Owl, and Rabbit. He starts bringing them food every day for his entire childhood, but then, when he's older, he goes away to college and has to abandon them. And now, all of a sudden, these stupid animals don't know how to take care of themselves? Apparently, Christopher has been enabling these worthless morons for so long that the second he leaves, they immediately start starving to death. In fact, things get so bad, the group decides to eat their buddy Eeyore. I mean, I feel like Piglet would have been the tastier choice.
Yummy, fresh Piglet.
But not the point. So let's break this down. You're telling me Pooh and the gang were so incapable of feeding themselves the second Christopher Robin leaves that they have no choice but to eat one of their own as a last resort? Are you f***ing kidding me? They weren't even very far from human civilization. I mean, a child was able to walk to them every day for over a decade to bring them food. You're telling me they couldn't have walked their lazy asses 15 minutes to where the humans live to scavenge food from a garbage can or a dumpster somewhere? Sure, it's not as fancy as the stuff Chris was bringing them, but it beats eating your friend, you lazy cretins. It turns out, cannibalizing their friend traumatizes them all. Although, I guess it's not really cannibalism since they're all different species. According to the movie, Pooh and the others became feral and developed a hatred of all things human. They made this pact where they renounced their humanity and returned to their animalistic roots, swearing to never talk again. Okay, first of all, if they went back to their animalistic roots, wouldn't Pooh just eat the rest of them? I mean, he's a bear. You don't think bears eat rabbits and pigs? And owls, apparently, according to the internet? But regardless, I can live with this premise. The problem is, the filmmakers don't really know how to follow through with their own concept. For starters, I have to talk about the character designs for Pooh and Piglet. The design of these characters is so lazy. They're just these big dudes in silicone masks and cliche slasher outfits. Pooh is basically Jason Voorhees. He's this hulking, unstoppable killer that murders people in a variety of brutal ways. They may as well have just called him Jason Poohies, which I guess makes Piglet Pig Leatherface. Despite saying that they renounced their humanity and went back to their animalistic ways, Pooh and Piglet are wearing human clothing. They go from these undressed, stuffed animal-looking things to these clearly humanoid creatures wearing button-up shirts and overalls. Piglet is even wearing gloves. I mean, you couldn't have splurged for a couple of fursuits at least? Both of these masks from this movie are from a company called Immortal Masks. The Pooh mask is a redesign of a mask called Friendo, which I guess was intended to be cute, but honestly, this shit's more horrifying to me than the scary version. The Piglet mask is just called Hog on the site. Both of these masks were being sold long before this Pooh production seemed to have even started, so it seems like the filmmakers didn't even come up with the designs themselves. As for Owl and Rabbit, even though they are seemingly still alive at the end of the intro, we never see them again or hear them mentioned throughout the rest of the movie. I assume this is because the mask company doesn't sell any rabbit or owl masks. So let's just talk about this movie. We cut to a few years later, and Christopher Robin is now engaged. He has this beautiful fiancée named Mary, and he's determined to convince her that Pooh and all of his other animal friends are real. He drags Mary all the way out to 100-acre woods to prove it. And this poor woman must really love Chris because this is a grown man with a medical degree insisting he's friends with a talking pig and bear and owl and donkey. Like those animals would even hang out together, let alone talk. They show up at the 100-acre woods and the place now looks like a murder junkyard. Honeypots dripping with blood, abandoned vehicles, There's a human skull underneath an Eeyore RIP sign. Mary wants to get the hell out of there, but Chris is like, no, I gotta go check on my friends. This whole scene is hilarious. If you imagine it from Mary's perspective, you just got engaged to this man who tells you he has these imaginary friends, except they're totally real. He's so insistent on this, he takes you out to the middle of nowhere to this supposed magical place, which is right out of a Wrong Turn movie. Even though this place is clearly a dangerous crime scene with blood and human remains everywhere, the man you fell in love with, the man you agreed to be with for the rest of your life, he refuses to leave. He refuses to take you to safety because he, a grown adult, needs to check on the welfare of his talking bear friend. Honestly, at this moment, if I'm Mary, my thought would be, oh my god, my fiancé is a serial killer with psychotic delusions about his childhood stuffed animals coming to life, and he brought me out here to murder me. Which would actually make more sense as a plotline than what the actual movie was. If they revealed at the end that Christopher was the one doing the Pooh killings the whole time, as his brain's twisted way of convincing himself that these characters are real, this movie would have been 100 times better. Christopher finally realized this place is pretty effed up, and they go to leave, but Piglet shows up. Despite the fact Piglet went from looking like a cute stuffed animal to this monstrous boar creature, Christopher instantly recognizes that this is Piglet. Piglet starts choking Mary with this giant chain, and the whole time Chris is sobbing, "No, Piglet, stop!" But he never actually tries to physically stop Piglet in any way, so Piglet just murders Mary, and then Chris tries to run, but Pooh cuts him off, and we go to the opening credits. So sometime later, this group of young women have rented this huge house in the middle of 100 Acre Woods for a relaxing getaway. One of the women, Maria, has this whole backstory where she was stalked by this creepy guy who broke into her house one night and tried to take her clothes off. We get a flashback scene of the event and a scene where Maria is talking to her therapist about her trauma, but none of it really has anything to do with the rest of the movie. My conspiracy theory for this subplot is that once the trailer went viral and the filmmakers realized they could make some real money with this movie, they repurposed some footage from another project to pad the runtime. Unfortunately for these girls, one of their friends never even makes it to the house. She gets lost on the way, and when she's trying to get phone reception, she sees Pooh. There's this chase through the woods, and they somehow end up in this random horror movie factory that's in the middle of 100 Acre Woods this whole time. So Pooh catches up to the woman, and he rips her top completely off like some sort of pervert. Her boobs are fully exposed, and then he shoves her into a wood chipper.
Well, that was certainly interesting.
Then we return to Pooh's lair, where we learn that Christopher Robin is still alive. He's being kept as a prisoner by Pooh. It seems like he's been down there a while. They show his fiance's corpse, and she's this dried up skeleton now. Which begs the question, how are they keeping Christopher alive? Did they feed him his dead fiance? And Pooh is so sad that Christopher left him, he has this mini meltdown where he starts throwing his furniture around. It kind of reminds me of one of those videos where they record some kid having a complete temper tantrum. To punish Christopher, Pooh grabs Eeyore's tail, which he kept as a souvenir, I guess, and he starts whipping Christopher with it, leaving all these nasty slashes on Chris's back. So back at the house, one of the girls, Laura, is outside in the hot tub taking selfies when she notices in one of the pics that Pooh is in the background watching her. Even though this creepy man bear is 50 feet away, and even though she knows someone is stalking Maria, Laura just decides to keep relaxing in the hot tub instead of running to tell her friends.
Be careful or you could get hurt.
No!
So of course, Pooh and Piglet sneak up behind her and chloroform her? I'm sorry, what? They're supposed to be a bear and a pig. Where did they get chloroform? How do they even know what chloroform is or how to use it? I'm a human being and I don't know where to get chloroform, and I'm not gonna Google it because I don't want to end up on some list. You're telling me these two feral animals found chloroform in the 100 Acre Wood, understood what it was, and correctly used it to knock out a victim, but couldn't figure out where to find a sandwich? So when Laura wakes up, she's hogtied in the middle of the road, and Piglet has this sledgehammer which he's using to pin her down. I mean, she's already hogtied, I'm not sure if this is necessary. And Winnie the Pooh is behind the wheel of a car. He steps on the gas, runs over Laura's head, and smushes it. Hold up. Now you're telling me Winnie the Pooh can drive. These motherfuckers ate Eeyore because they couldn't find food, and they can drive? Oh, Christopher left us and we can't find food. Maybe drive to McDonald's, you fucking morons? Pooh and Piglet get into the house and start chasing the other girls. One of the girls, Zoe, falls into this indoor lap pool, which leads to this ridiculous slow chase through the water, where Piglet is just slowly chasing Zoe on foot through 4-foot deep water, while Zoe is trying to swim, even though she could just walk through the water herself. Or, I don't know, just get out of the pool. So of course, Piglet catches up to Zoe and obliterates her skull with a sledgehammer like a watermelon. He then knocks out one of the other girls, Alice, and brings her back to Pooh. And Pooh just starts slapping Alice? What? Why? Maria and Jess show up and rescue Alice, and then they find Christopher Robin still tied up. They release him, and he tells them there is another survivor, and they should go rescue her. So the other girls find and free this other woman, who looks like she's been tortured by Pooh and Piglet. They ask the lady what happened, and the lady says, Pooh and Piglet. The girls are like, Pooh and Piglet? And the lady says, that's what they call themselves. They talk in broken English. Didn't the opening scene say they swore to never talk again, but now it's, well, they kind of talk, just not very well? Also, I understand why Christopher Robin was being held captive, but I'm confused why some of these victims are instantly run over with cars and left in the street, or smashed with a sledgehammer and left in the pool, but then other victims are abducted and brought back to the Pooh lair. So the captured lady tries to confront Piglet to get revenge, but then just gets killed. Then Alice manages to get the drop on Piglet and smashes his skull in with his own sledgehammer, but then Pooh impales Alice in the face with a big knife. Maria and Jess manage to escape to the main road, where they run into these redneck dudes with British accents. I didn't even know Britain had rednecks, but I guess they do. The girls tell the rednecks about Pooh, then Pooh shows up. The rednecks start acting all badass. They have these weapons like crows and baseball bats, and they plan on beating the crap out of Pooh. They acknowledge that Pooh isn't a human, but this doesn't seem to daunt them or freak them out in any way. The lead redneck whacks Pooh in the face with a crowbar. Pooh just brushes it off, and the redneck says my favorite line of the movie,
"You ain't gonna be standing soon when we start whipping the shit out of ya."
Even though he already tried whipping the shit out of Pooh and it did nothing. So naturally, these guys try to take down Pooh, and of course, he kills them all. The rest of the movie is a big action scene, where the girls try to run over Pooh with the redneck's car. Pooh ends up on top of the moving car trying to grab them. The car crashes. Pooh is still alive. He decapitates Jess, and then Christopher finally shows up and tries to run over Pooh with another car, but Pooh grabs Maria. Christopher pleads with Pooh not to kill Maria, saying he'll stay at 100 Acre Wood forever, but then Pooh finally talks, saying, "You left," before cutting Maria's throat. The movie ends with Christopher Robin escaping, so I guess they intend him to be the franchise's ongoing hero, but as a hero, he's the absolute worst. Okay, let's break down how useless Christopher Robin is in this movie. He takes his loving fiancée out to the woods, where a pig monster kills her, and Chris does nothing to stop this. He spends most of the movie as Pooh's prisoner before being rescued by the girls. Instead of leaving with the girls, he tells them to go help the other captive, which leads to one of his rescuers and the captive being killed, with Christopher nowhere to be seen. He then shows up at the end of the movie and momentarily saves Maria, but then Pooh slashes her throat while Christopher does nothing to physically stop him. And then, as Maria slowly bleeds to death, Christopher just runs away like a coward. It's a shame because the base concept of a Winnie the Pooh horror movie is pretty cool, and it would have been interesting to see it done with a bigger budget by someone who had a more creative idea than Winnie the Pooh slasher movie.
What would you have done?
Your mom.
Some of the kill scenes are kind of fun, and the film actually looks good for its tiny budget. But Turning this premise into a slasher movie just feels like a wasted opportunity. And I'm saying this as someone who loves slasher movies. Honestly, given the characters' origins as these stuffed animals come to life, I feel like the whole creepy killer dolls horror trope would have made more sense for this project than slasher movie. But if you have to do it as a slasher movie, then you should adjust your premise to fit what you can afford. I could buy it if the killers were meant to be deranged human psychopaths who simply believed they were Pooh and Piglet, but there's not a moment in this movie where I was convinced I was watching actual creatures and not just guys in masks. So that's Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Thanks for watching. Check this other stuff out. And until next time, later, Danger Seekers.